Do comic companies have a social media policy? Do they have a standard of guidelines that creators and other people need to follow in order to keep their jobs? Well, the answer is yes. But if that's so, why don't people enforce it? Let me go into that. Hey everybody, this is Perch. This video is going to cover two topics, one of which I think is going to be fairly controversial and get people upset, and the other is pretty straightforward. But I think the mixing of the two may get some people riled up. We'll see what we can do here. I'm going to be talking about this as just kind of boring, blunt, matter of fact as possible. I have a feeling that if I got really like screamy with this topic, that I would get like triple the views, and I could like put some like a cover to the video with like me, like with an outraged face, like, ah, and then, some people or emojis kind of, indicating the people I'm pissed about. I don't know. But the topic is, because it comes up every now and then, some creators, somebody within comics will do something nutty in on social media. They'll scream at somebody or ask them to eat their butt or, whatever it happens to be. And the response is always like, "Whoa, why aren't these people fired? Why isn't somebody stepping in to enforce? Can you believe a creator's doing this?" And then they like at Marvel. I always picture when you like at like a very, not only say famous person, but, and this isn't true of CB Smolsky, but sometimes people like at Bob Iger, and they at Disney. It's like, do you think that Bob Iger and whoever runs that Disney account is anybody of any consequence? Like, I want you to picture, like, can you believe they're doing this at Disney? And then the person who runs a Disney social media account is like watching it and they're bored, and then suddenly ding, and like, oh my God, somebody just notified me on Twitter. Quick, run down the hall, and like they print out the tweet and they go running down the hall. We've got a response. We've got to address. How do we want to address this? No, nobody is caring. There's mute filters, and people are just ignoring all this. Big corporations, I've seen this with my own eyes. They put these filters on their social media accounts, and the filters are not to weed people out, but basically let people in. So they'll put like the responses with a couple of keywords, and if it doesn't match those stuff, it goes into a big giant bin, and then nobody looks at it until somebody draws it to their attention or it hits one of their filters. And generally speaking, nothing is hitting the filter, so it's just going into the waste bin. But they're right. People are right in a sense that there are social media policies, and in a lot of cases, creators or directors or people who work for these big companies are violating those social media policies all the time. It goes on constantly. So the question becomes, why does anybody say something? Why don't they get fired? Why doesn't somebody get called into HR and told, hey, you're violating the social media policy? Well, the simple truth of the matter is that policy is never meant to be enforced. The policy is there for one of two reasons. Either the creator accidentally posts something that is so outrageous, or maybe just normal outrageous, but for whatever reason it starts trending, like what happened to Chuck Winding. And then suddenly, if there looks like there's the PR and the press is going to turn against the company, like what happened with Chuck Winding, then suddenly somebody can pull out that social media policy and say, oh man, you've made me pull out the social media policy, and now you're screwed. And it's not been uncommon. Big companies will say this to you. They'll put a lot of things in your contract or in terms, and then they'll put that into the drawer. And their basic premise is, don't do anything to make me take this out of the drawer, because if I do, then suddenly I'm going to beat you with every tool I have legally. But most of the time, it stays in the drawer, and the creators and the employers and the employees, everybody knows this. So there's a lot of leeway, and people play it loose in a lot of cases with these policies and with these things. So they'll just, they'll kind of, leave people to their own devices, and they will say what they want to say. Now, so this is kind of a sad fact. It's like, well, why aren't big corporations? Well, how do we hold big corporations accountable to these social media policies? And the answer is you don't. Unfortunately, and this is going to sound really crazy, if a lot of the big companies, or your company, the one you worked with, they start heavily enforcing what's in a social media policy, nearly everyone gets fired. They're written in such a way, again, not to police behavior, but to give company cover for any type of scenario that might develop, anything that's vaguely sexist, racist, threatening. It's why they use words that are super broad. I mean, many social media policies, including the one that exists at Disney, which includes Marvel, or AT&T, which includes DC, Time Warner, they have these, and they'll say things like, you know, public statements that are threatening or otherwise damage the reputation of the company. Or, I mean, that could be anything. If I say, hey, the old office here in Burbank looks a little grimy today, that's damaging the reputation of the company. Instantly, I could be fired. You almost they The whole point of these policies is so that if you bother someone, if you trip over whatever it happens to be in the company, and you need to get fired, that the legal department can hold this up as justification, one of many justifications for why they need to terminate you quickly. That's the whole point of it, to give them protection, not you. And that's why some creators and some people, if they're savvy, and please see my other video, You Need a Lawyer, when you do contracts and you have any kind of negotiating power at all with these companies, it's good to get these things corrected. It's good to void out your social media policy, or to give yourself some legal protection in case this ever comes to pass. Nobody wants to go to court. Nobody wants to pull out these contracts and these various clauses. But if they do, it would be nice if you had some ammo in your belt as well as them. Problem is, if you're a new creator, you don't really have much to stand on. So that's why don't most creators get called on the carpet for social media policies? Well, because they don't really want to enforce them. And to make matters worse, if they start enforcing them on a regular basis, they start setting a precedent. And then they're almost they get in a position where they have to start enforcing everything. Or they set up a scenario where a creator can say, well, you enforced it for him, but not for me. What gives? Marvel almost tripped into that situation with Chuck Winding. They took a gamble, and to some extent, that he was not going to, he didn't have the money or the ability or the strength to go and really fight this thing in court. And by the way, you're going up against Disney, so good luck to you, no matter what kind of case you have. But if this gets going enough, that will start to happen. So that's why this thing just kind of sits there as an empty threat, in the drawer in case Eric Esquivel decides to do something crazy, and then suddenly you can pull this out and said, well, in addition to all these claims and these statements that are going on that aren't necessarily provable, but we think you're probably a weird sicko harassing creep. And by the way, we also have the social media policy which you violated, so clearly you're against your contract. Goodbye. And that's how it's done. Now to the more controversial part, because what I just said, I hopefully isn't controversial. It's just facts, and they may not be facts anybody likes, but those are the facts. So the controversial part I've got is here's a direct question that I had, which was, Comicsgate, have they done any good to the industry by pointing out these various social media things that creators have done? Have they benefited the community? Have they benefited comics by pointing out these things? And in some cases, making a really big deal about it, making lots of kind of angry videos or any of the rest. Has Comicsgate actually caused change where these social media policies and the other things are concerned? That's the question I got on Twitter. And the answer is unfortunately, no. I say unfortunately because I think it'd be a better world if all the creators and the fans and everybody else treat each other with a little bit more respect. Everyone, universal, full stop, not fans only, not creators only, everyone. And I think it'd be better if they did. I think it'd be really nice if they could do that without the threat of kind of legal intervention and social media clauses and other chaos. I think that would be a better way to go about it. But, human nature is as human nature does, and it is what it is. The reality is, Comicsgate is a movement, and maybe I go into that at some point, just kind of all the ins and outs, because it's a complex, messy topic, and it keeps changing many aspects of who's involved and who's not, and what it means to be, CG and anti-CG, and what even CG means. It's like, in a lot of cases, I mean, thank goodness the articles and all the heat was really a 2018, 2019 early problem, and everybody seems to have tired of the topic from that perspective, and that's a good thing. But when people, whether they're Comicsgate, CG, or whatever they happen to be, point out that a creator is being unprofessional on Twitter, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, the creator shouldn't be that way. It's not good for anybody. Most of all, the creator themselves, because they're just you're blowing your own kind of goodwill to the fans. You're not making a good name for yourself, and in this industry, no matter all the trappings and the various comments and everything else, it is based on a symbiotic relationship with the creator to the fan. The creator can only act like a crazy a-hole for, so long before eventually the fans will stop caring. That career dies an ugly death. That's another fact. It does. It's not a business that goes on forever if you're a jerk. No matter who you're a jerk to, it just does seem to peter out. Now, maybe not fast enough for people. I think there's some folks that are like, this creator is a complete jerk and they've been a jerk for the last 18 months and why aren't they fired yet? This is ridiculous. And I'm like, dude, Steve Ditko is a wonderful artist, pretty amazing. Not the best bedside manner, you could say. And he had an entire career. So I don't know. It catches up with you, certainly, but it does not happen overnight. Anyway, I think that pointing out the tweets and doing all this stuff, in my mind, I think, and God, people are going to hate what I'm about to say, but in many cases, I think it's done the opposite of what it intends. If the goal was, hey, we want to shine a light on this bad behavior and we want to get the industry kind of in a place where people aren't yelling at each other, then I think that a lot of the CG efforts kind of ran counter to that, because what they did was they made so much noise that people within Disney, people within the companies could look at that and say, yeah, maybe we said something bad, but look at these even worse things. The fans are harassing us. Look, there's harassment here. Look, they're coming at us. About harassment. And that's been kind of the word of the day in social media for the past at least 2 years, has been heavily toxic fandom, fans going at things, fans screaming about things. And so unfortunately, it's really easy, and you watch creators do it all the time. They post something kind of just dumb, kind of nonsensical, and 12 fans will go, hey, you're stupid. And the creator then will write a bunch of posts like, I got a bunch of dude bros in my mentions really going at me. I'm being harassed. And you look at that from a distance and you're like, you're everybody's being stupid here. You're not being harassed by 12 people. This is not the big tragedy of the year. You do not have the Twitter equivalent of the coronavirus coming at you. It's you are being, you got some people complaining at you, and it sucks. Yeah. And I'm sure it's tough. Yeah. But let's not, stop with the, I'm a poor victim. Just cut it out. You posted something dumb in the first place. Yes, these people were dumb to come at you for you posting something dumb, but everyone is dumb here. That's kind of how it all sits. And so when I say that the CG efforts haven't been helpful, it's just in this one regard, because I think some of the CG campaigns bringing a light to price problems with comics, variant problems. I'm now seeing creators, many creators, talk about the problem of pricing in comics and the problem about how to engage the store. I am seeing improvement in that level, and so I think to give credit where credit's due, I think some people within CG and other places in social media did help bring some of these topics to the surface. So I think that's a good thing. I think that the going at creators who are doing bad social media things, I think that the people who are doing bad social media things might have, and it's a stretch. Remember everything I just said earlier about the social media policy. I think they might have gotten knocked for some of the things they were saying, but because there was so much kind of at Marvel, hey, can you believe what your person is doing? Because there's so much of that, it gave these people cover to keep doing what they were doing. And so I'm not, and keep in mind, please don't misinterpret what I'm about to say, get your downvotes ready. I'm not saying that this excuses bad creator behavior at all. In fact, completely the opposite. I'm saying that bad behavior would be good to be addressed. And I think that, so much smoke got into the air that it made hard for people to address that behavior. It made it difficult to see who was doing what wrong in the first place. And so a company, if they've got to choose between kind of random guy on social media or the person they've hired and you're giving them money to, they're going to pick the person they're giving money to. That's a safe bet. Unfortunately, that's how it goes. That's where the credibility comes in. What does all this mean? It means I wish people were nicer to each other. I wish that there was more guidance and mentorship on the part of the publishers to help train creators in some cases to do better things with their career, with their money, with their presence, all this stuff. I think a lot of creators need that, and it's a resource that used to exist more in the 80s, doesn't really exist today. I think that would all be good. Do I wish social media policies were applied more? I do. I really think they should, but I understand they're just a legal tool. And the sooner I think other people understand that too, the maybe the healthier it will all be. I think some people expect things to happen that are just never going to happen, and that's no good for anyone. But anyway, that's what I think. Those are my thoughts on the matter. Disagree with me in the comments below. Please let me know. I said a lot here in this video, so I may be misunderstood in a lot of cases. I'm curious what you think, and if you need clarification, bring it on. I will be happy to do it. This video went a little long. Sorry about that. Like, subscribe if you don't mind. Go on Twitter at comic and yeah, go on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter, Comic Perch. Thanks for listening. Yeah, thanks for listening. I will adhere by all the social media policies. That's what I'll do.